so let's start these harder questions. This will definitely sort out the top students from the rest. Okay, so we're making R the subject in this one. So we're going to start with what they've given us. This is what we're trying to get to be the subject, R. So to start off with, we're going to move this, get rid of this and move it to the other side. So instead of plussing, we're minusing over here. So we'll copy the 1 over x down, move that over, and that leaves us with 1 over R here. Now that bit's easy, but it's getting harder from here. So the tricky thing is not to be tempted to go, oh, okay, well then x minus s must equal R, because that's wrong, all right? Because if you think about it, if we had something like 1/2 minus 1/4 equals 1/4, does that mean that 2 minus 4 equals 4? Because that's wrong, and that's actually right, so something's gone wrong. Okay, so we can't do that. We can't just look at the denominators on their own. But what you can do is look at this left-hand side here where we have a subtraction of fractions and get a common denominator over there. So I'm just going to leave the right-hand side alone at the moment and try and get all of that left-hand side into one fraction. So if I get a common denominator for x and s, let's multiply them together and we'll get xs. So that means over here I've times the x by s to get that denominator, and I'm going to do the same to the top. So that will give me 1 times s, which is s on the top. And over here, what have we multiplied s by to get this denominator? We multiplied by x and do the same to the top. So that will leave you with minus 1 times x is x. So now I've written these two separated fractions into one fraction. Now that makes it a lot different to what we had before, because now, sorry, I'll just write this so it looks all on the one level. Okay, now what we can do is, because this is one entire fraction on the left and one entire fraction on the right, you can flip them now. Okay, so as long as you've got one, I'll do this with my red pen on the side. So as long as you've got one fraction and one fraction, you can swap them over, all right? You can make them upside down. That's okay, but it has to look like that first, right? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to get reciprocals of both sides. So what happens when we do that? So turn the left-hand side upside down. We've got xs on the top and s minus x on the bottom. There's your equals in the middle. Flip this upside down as well. We've got r over 1. Now r over 1 is just r. Now look at what we were trying to do. We were trying to make r the subject, and r now is the subject. So now we can just write it up. Sorry, the left-hand side and the right-hand side swapped around. And there's the answer to our question. So the trick with this one, start off like you normally would, but then when you get to a point like this, you must have the left and the right-hand sides as one fraction each. One fraction on the left, one fraction on the right, and then you can flip them and get the reciprocals. Okay, let's look at this next question. Now this has been worded a bit differently, but it doesn't make any difference to what they've asked you to do. We're solving it for A. That just means we're getting A by itself, like we would if we were solving any equation. All right, now the problem with these ones is that we have A here and here. So that's a bit of a problem at the moment. So when you've got the subject that you're looking for in two different terms, and especially on two different sides of the equation, they can be tricky. All right, so there are a couple of things we need to do here. Step 1, we need to get these letters together. So we want to get the A's on one side of the equation. Now, that's no different to what we would normally do. If we were solving an equation, we have A's on the left and A's on the right, we always get those A terms together. So that shouldn't be anything new. So let's do that first. All right, you can move them to the left or you can move them to the right. It doesn't really matter with this. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Oh, we might just leave this Q here, then we don't have to move as many things. Okay, so we're going to move it over here. Leave that. And we're going to move our plus AP over to the other side to be minus AP. All right, now we're keeping that Q. All right, and then over on the left-hand side, we've got our A's together now. Now, what can we do to create one A? All right, so our aim now is to only have A written once. And at the moment, we still have it written twice. Now, the way you make that happen is you take out A, I'll write it like that so we know what we're doing. Take out A as a common factor. So once you practice this, you'll understand why it all works. Okay, so over here on the left-hand side, we're taking out the A as a common factor. Now, just be careful with this. If A comes out of there, we're not left with nothing on the top. There is a 1A there, remember? So we're going to have 1 over 5 left there. And then if we take the A out of this, we're going to be left with minus P. So now you can only see the A written once, which is what we want. Okay, now it's up to you sort of how you sort of approach things from here on. It's up to you. I would probably, at some point, we're going to have to divide by all of this to move it over here and have the A by itself. And at the moment, it's a little bit of a mess. So I think we might take this and get it into one term. So watch what I do. Leaving all of that alone. So on the bottom of this, just get your red pen and give it a denominator of 1 because it doesn't have a denominator at the moment. So we're going to get a common denominator for 5 and 1, that's 5. I haven't touched this denominator, so I'm not touching the top, the numerator, it stays. This one though, I've times the bottom by 5 to get my common denominator, so I'm going to do the same to the top. So that will give me minus 5p. All right, now watch carefully what happens next because it's still got some tricky parts to it. All right, now we want to get that A by itself. So we're going to get rid of all of that. So at the moment, we're timesing by all of that. So we're going to come over here, write the Q down, and we're going to divide by all of that. Okay, now when you're dividing by a fraction, that looks very messy with all those fraction bars. So dividing by a fraction is the same as timesing by the reciprocal. So we're going to write the Q down. Instead of dividing, we're timesing by the upside down of this. And notice how I've written it so that that lines up with the top of the fraction so that you don't get tempted to sort of involve it with the bottom. And then if you need to, you can put over 1 there. Times your tops times your bottoms. And let's see what this looks like. Times the tops and we have 5Q. Times the bottoms, well, you're only multiplying by 1, aren't you? Really, I've got no room left, have I? Okay. Hopefully you can see all that. You don't really need the brackets there because, as I said, normally with anything with more than one term, we put it in brackets, but it is assumed to be in brackets when we're dealing with fractions. Okay, so I'll just write that again so you can see what I've done. That's the answer. Do not be tempted to go crossing out those 5s, okay? You've got 1 term on the top, 2 terms on the bottom. You cannot do any cancelling. That's the answer. All right, we've got another tricky one here, so let's have a look at it. We're solving for A. There's the A in 2 spots. That creates a problem, all right? So we have to try, now we've got them both on the one side, so it's not like we're trying to get them on the one side of the equation. They are on the one side of the equation. But here, we're going to just use our common sense. I want you to write this down, just because when you're in a test and you're in a panic situation, you go, I've got to do something. I can't just leave this blank because Mrs. Breen will be very angry with me if I leave this blank. So we're going to use our common sense here. Do something. Even if you don't think it's going to lead anywhere, do something. Okay, so this is what I'm hoping you're going to think. So at the moment, we really don't like fractions that much. We like to get rid of them. Okay, so our thought process is, let's get rid of the fractions. Now, when you get rid of the fraction, you're actually getting rid of the denominator of the fraction. Okay, so write all that down in red pen, and now let's have a look at it. Okay, so to get rid of our denominator here, instead of dividing by it, I'm going to come over to the other side and times by it. All right, so my AX will stay there. And over here on the right, I have P, and I'm going to bring that over and times by it. Now, it's got more than one term, so it's really important that we put our brackets in here, because when we come over here and times by it, those brackets will have to be there. Okay, so we're going to be timesing by bracket A plus Y in there. All right, so now let's have a look at what we've got. We've created a good idea because we've got rid of our fractions. However, we've now created A on two different sides of the equation. So I'm just going to expand this and you can have a little look at what's going on now. All right, so all fractions are gone, that's good. But we've got to get these A's back to the same side of the equation. All right, so I'm going to leave that there because that's got nothing to do with any A's. I'm going to keep my A's here and I'm going to move these ones back over the other side here so it will become minus PA. All right, now, what did I say once you've got the A's on the one side of the equation? You've got to take the A out as a common factor. So that's what I'm doing here, take it out as a common factor, and that will be X minus P left there. This stays. All right, now we're nearly there. We've got A written in one spot now. That's good. So we'll just write the A down. We're now getting rid of this. So instead of timesing by X minus P, we come over here and divide by X minus P. Now, I haven't written the brackets down. If you want to, you can. But once it goes into a fraction, it is assumed that it is in brackets anyway. But if you want, you can put them around there. And now we're going to swap it all way around, left and right hand side swap. And there's our answer. So if you look through this question, we did a lot of moving from one side to the other to eventually get our answer. But when you practice this sort of question, it is in the last question in the exercise, you get more of an idea of what's going on. So don't want anyone giving up when you get to those questions. I want you to read through what I did here and take it slowly and see if you can get it to work for you. Let me know if there's any problems with this work.